Good morning, everyone. Right, can you hear me okay? I'd like to welcome all of you. I'd like to welcome our tribees that are here. Thank you for being here. My name is Michael Weska. I'm from San Diego, California, and I'm a birth parent. I've been around with many of you, traveling over the last year, talking about Family First and how it impacts our families. I want to start with something. I used to write out what I was going to say, but after Dr. Sanders, it's easy to be inspired. I call him the Michael Jordan of child welfare. So today I want to talk a little bit about the why. And he hit it. I have yet met a social worker who got into social services to dismantle families. Doesn't happen that way, right? We want to be that why for you. So I hope that we're able to hear or share our stories and you can hear something that can connect you and remind you the why. Because as Commissioner Miller is here today, he's got some daunting tasks to do for Family First. And that why really needs to be strong within you because those tasks, I'm sure, are going to be very daunting. So with that, I'd like to invite you to hear a conversation with my colleagues. And I will start, as I said, I'm Michael Weska from San Diego, birth parent.
Hi, I'm Allie Caliendo from Las Vegas. I'm a foster and adoptive parent.
Good morning, my name is Deshaun Jackson. I am a foster care alum from Las Vegas as well.
I am Gail Engel. I'm a grandmother raising my grandson from Colorado.
And I'm Toni Miner, and I'm also a birth parent and a kinship care provider in Colorado.
So I want to start with why. Why do you do what you do? Why are you here today? Allison?
So I have been inspired to do this work and the work I do with kinship families and with children in care through my mother's story. So I watched her suffer while I was a child. My mom was adopted in the 50s when it was a closed adoption, and then her adoptive parents, my grandparents, didn't allow her to acknowledge that she was adopted. They didn't allow her to talk about it. So one of my first memories with my mom is her sort of grabbing me by the shoulders and looking me in the eyes and saying, "You're the only person on earth that I know I'm related to," as if it was some kind of secret. And I watched her suffer with depression my whole childhood, and that depression only lifted when she found her biological family. And so that inspired me to make sure that when children can't be with their parents, they need to be with their family, and that's why I'm passionate about supporting kinship families. And then with my own son, who's now 5 and adopted, I'm watching him deal with the very difficult and painful questions around his identity. And I know there's a hole in him that we as adoptive parents are not going to be able to fill and shouldn't expect to fill for him. So I'm really inspired to work for a broader system of care that perhaps is less grateful for children's resilience and more supportive of families so that we're not adding this layer of separation trauma.
Thank you. Sean?
I think one of the things that has inspired me and keeps me in this is that I lived the experience. I was in foster care for 4.5 years. And not only that, but I was helped along the way, and I think it's that piece. It's the story that starts with the young boy and the starfish, and I think in that story and in that essence, I represented one of those starfish, and it took someone to help me along the way. It necessarily wasn't the system itself, but it was a group of folks outside of the system that helped coach me along the way, and because of that, I felt there was a need to give back because I had been blessed with another opportunity to give back, and I felt like because of that, there's so many youth that don't have a voice, that are just like the thousands of starfish that swim aboard, that came aboard, that don't have the opportunity and don't have that little boy to throw them back into the ocean of life. And I think it's in that essence that I continue to do what I do. And it's because of again, it's because of folks that saw something greater in me that made me want to give back to those that don't necessarily have a voice or someone to stand up for them.
Thank you. Gail?
My daughter has mental illness, has had it for a long, long time. Eventually, she had a child, and that child was born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and autism. When I tried to find help for my daughter, even as a teenager, it was very difficult. There was no services. So then when I was raising my grandson, again, there was no services. So all of us reach out to our peers to find resources and help us figure out how to maneuver these things. And there was no services. There were nothing that helped me maneuver through things. And so I created an organization of grandparents raising grandchildren, and we are peers that help support each other. And the more I am involved with my other grandparents and other families, I feel more supported, they feel more supported, and then I get encouraged to spread the word and encourage you all to do what you do, because it does take a village to raise these children.
It does. My passion is coming from that of a birth parent that's in recovery. I am a meth addict, and I have been in recovery for over 16 years. Now, I have 2 adult daughters who had to live through my addiction. And when I got clean, when I got the help that I needed, my daughters didn't get the help that they needed. So my oldest daughter has carried on to have 3 children and has lost all 3 of them. I am raising 2 of her 3 kids and had to make one of the toughest decisions that I ever had to make about 2 years ago when her other child was in jeopardy, and I had to call social services on her because she was being neglected. And knowing full well that I've got 3 children in my home, I'm a single parent, and that I cannot take child number 3. Well, she is now on home number 5, okay? She is 3 years old, and in a year and a half, she has been in 5 placements. My passion is so that we can go in and help these families so that no child ever has to go through what my granddaughter is now going through, what my grandchildren have gone through, and what my daughters have gone through. I work as a family support partner in Jefferson County, and so that really helps me to go in and partner with the families that are going through the same thing as what I went through. It is so much easier for families to hear from someone like me who has been through it than to hear from someone who's went to school for it. So that really is what my passion is about.
Thank you. So I will share that, what fuels my fire, so to speak, is really one thing, the one statement, and my son said this to me, who's now 23. My youngest is 23, my daughter's 30. My son said, our children deserve better. And that is why I do what I do. Our children deserve better. And I think that's also why all of us in this room are here, is because we know that our children deserve better. So with that in mind, I want to vision a child welfare system in 10 years. And with all of the people that are here, who are champions, who are on the move of cultivating a change, what will this vision look like for our child welfare system? What are going to be the key core values that this system would have? I'd like to start with you, Deshaun.
I think in 10 years, the perfect system would be a system that looks at both ends. And it's focusing on the preventative measures, but also looking at the outcomes. I think with all that we see today, it's so important that we focus. There's so many, the system, as we all know, was never designed to be a system in which youth stayed in very long. And because of that, it was never created or never designed to raise children. And because of that, we have a lot of youth that fall through the cracks, that repeat the same cycle over and over and over again. And so when looking at from 10 years from now, it would be great to see a system that is community-based. There's the African proverb that was stated earlier, which is, it takes a village to raise a child. And it's in that essence that I think that in 10 years, the system would look great when it has a community support system on the front end and a community support system on the back end. One thing that the system itself has never been able to do is gather community supports in the way in which it could and the way in which it should in order to help families early on. I think now a lot of states are looking at, especially in Las Vegas, is looking at how they can bring in the community, how they can bring in the church, how they can bring in other providers. The problem is doing it aggressively and doing it more focused on let's help the families and get them where they need to be so that we don't have what we have now, which are more teen pregnancies, which are more foster youth entering the system and repeating the same cycle that their parents did. One thing about me is that my mother was in care at one point in time, and so that cycle kind of repeated right on itself. I have a sister now that has 3 kids, and that is most likely her children will end up in the system because of her actions, but because she doesn't have a support system, and because it was never designed. So in 10 years, I think it's one of those things to where it has to be, idealistically, it would be beautiful to have a support system on both the front end and the back end.
Thank you. Allison?
I envision a system that truly values connection. So the connection between children and their parents primarily, and how important that is, and also connecting parents to resources so that they can connect to their children in healthy and safe ways, and truly providing them with the support that's needed without shame and without sort of increasing the spiral. And I think what you said about having it community-based is so important. That is critical to providing real support to parents. But also the connections between siblings, between grandparents and other relatives. I know my son has a brother, and he has a grandmother that's raising that brother that couldn't take him because she didn't feel she had the support. A system that acknowledges the deep pain of disconnection. One of the worst days of my life was the day of my son's termination of parental rights trial. And the hardest thing, when I think back on it, is one of his caseworkers came up to us and said, "Congratulations." And it was not a happy day. And it was, my husband and I were crying in the parking lot of family court, just thinking about how much he'd lost in such a short period of time. Those connections don't go away because of the termination of parental rights. And someday, and probably someday soon, because he's super smart, I'm gonna have to explain to him why that happened and what that was. So really valuing connection and then empathy for when that disconnection happens, because it's so real for kids. A system that values family first, family first, I get it, but really supports the family so that children do not have to be separated, so we're not deliberately creating more disconnection. That added separation trauma, like I said, is so painful for kids, and so I'd like to see a system that connection first, family first.
Thank you. Tony?
So for me, 10 years from now, I would love to have systems that work together, that talk to each other, and that when a family goes in and asks for help, that they get it. So I have experienced over this last year, my 9-year-old grandson had to be hospitalized 3 different times within 6 weeks before he even turned 9. I have been asking for help for 4 years for him. And mind you, he's 9 years old. I've had him since he was 5 months old. But he has suffered significant trauma throughout his life. No parent, grandparent, or provider for these children should ever be turned away or even be asked why they're asking for help. I'm asking for help because my child needs this. I'm asking for help because he has become a very scary person. Please help me. I did not get the in-home help that I needed until after his 3rd hospitalization. And then our mental health system came in and said, "Oh, you must really need this help." And I'm going, "I've been asking for this for 4 years. Not many people are going to keep fighting for 4 years. I work in the system, and I could not get the help that I needed for my family. So I look at this, and I have to try to keep a positive attitude about it, that this is God giving me these lessons so that I can better help the families that I work with. Mm-hmm. Because if me being in the system is going through that much frustration and ready to give up, how do our families feel? Why do our families give up so easily as we perceive it? But it's not. They're done, they're tired, they can't do it anymore, they're frustrated, and all they wanted was help. You know, we need to be able to put systems in place that go in and help the parents that are struggling with their children. We need those in their home rather than removing them from the home and expecting the parents to learn this on their own. You cannot heal a family by taking a child. You have to heal a family by working with the family.
Good point. Thank you. Okay.
And I agree. Our families are in crisis. When my daughter was mentally ill and came home and told me she was pregnant, our whole family became in crisis. It became like a divorce. We didn't know what to do, and when you can't find help, it's a struggle. And when these families are in crisis, they don't know who to turn to. But I also think that Child Protective Services needs to take a different role, a different perspective. We're not here to to protect these children. In my county, Larimer County, it's called the Youth and Family Services. We are here to protect our families, to support our families. And when families see a system that is there to be protective, it creates this fear, this anxiety, and they are afraid to ask for help. They won't go out until it's absolutely a crisis. So let's be more of a protective, more supportive of our families as they walk through this journey, which is a long, long journey. When these kids reach 18, it's not over.
That's a very good point. And you know, I want to say that my vision shares a lot of what you've all shared. I would really like to see our system go from interrogation, investigation, to a much more responsive mode of collaboration, partnership. I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's possible. And I think all of the things that we've covered are definitely imperative to make this change. So let's talk about best practices. How are we going to have best practices, and are there some out there that will support this vision we have? Tony?
So to me, some of the best practices that are out there are the peer mentor programs. I work as a family support partner in Jefferson County, and at this point, I am the only family support partner in Jefferson County. My role is very unique in Jeffco, though, that I'm not just closed in to work with families that have a child welfare case, a child dependency case. I am open to work with any family in Jeffco that has a need, whether that be for resources, navigation of systems. I go to IEP meetings, the school meetings with families to help them understand what's going on, because all too often parents go into any meeting with any system, and if they don't understand, because parents are so used to being talked at instead of talked to, that they think they have to agree to everything, even if they don't understand, because usually it's their child that's at risk. So, you know, my role is really to bridge that gap between the parents and the systems that they work with. I do know of 2 peer mentor programs. One is in Washington State, and the other one is in Iowa, that does have some really good data to back them up. They are doing very, very well, and to my knowledge, I believe they're both statewide. Is that correct, Michael?
That is correct.
You know, we need peers to work with people, because a social worker, a judge, anybody can go in and try to tell a family what to do, but if they have not been through it, the first thing that goes through that family's head is, you haven't been through it. You have no idea how I'm feeling. And all too often I hear parents say, have you ever had your child removed from you? Have you ever had the fear of having your child removed from you? No. You know, most people that are coming into these families' lives have never had that happen to them, and they have the opportunity of talking to their parents every day. You know, I have done a lot of work with Dr. Sanders, and one thing that he has brought to the Birth Parent Advisory Committee that Michael and I are a part of is that he talks to his mom all the time. He could not imagine what it would be like for someone to tell him that he could not talk to his mom. And that is what we need to look at when we're working with these families, because no matter what has happened within these families, those children still love their parents. They don't think that their parents are bad people. And a lot of times it's generational, and the parents don't know any better. We've got to partner with them, and not just social services. Every single entity out there that touches that family's life needs to partner with them. We have all got to be a big community together.
Thank you. Gail, best practices?
Well, I think that we need to also educate our grandparents and our parents on what their choices are, what their opportunities are. And I agree, the peers, whether it be a birth parent or a grandparent, we need those peers who understand what they're going through, where they're going, how they can process that system. We know what happens in the system. We can help these people better than anybody can. So I think kinship navigators that understand and are run by the people who understand what is going on is one of the most important things.
Good, thank you. Alex?
So I would second everything that's been said. Kinship navigation programs do work because we have that peer relationship, like Tony was saying, how important that peer relationship is to families taking action. When it's a peer reaching out saying, hey, you can trust me, I've been where you are, let me help you, you're having great impact on that family's lives. So being able to support those community-based, peer-based programs is critical. And then also training foster parents to make sure that they know how to partner with birth parents and putting the onus on foster parents to really be a reunification partner. That's critical, and I know we talk a lot about it in some areas, but I think it really needs to be pushed forward. Foster parents can be the best partner for birth parents in getting kids home, and that's how we need to reframe foster parenting.
Thank you. Sean?
And I think just to piggyback on a lot of that is it's a dual effect. I think it has to do with including the family as a whole, and that means youth having a voice as well as the adults in the beginning, and I think it's having that community-based approach. So when we think about best practice, you all hold the knowledge, the book part of it. The folks that have been through it hold the actual life experience, and because of that, I think it takes a dual effect, but it also encompasses including the voice of not only the parents, but also the youth as well.
And I definitely agree with everything that you said. You know, for me, it comes back to collaboration and partnership. And that's something that our past system, and I want to say past system because we're moving forward, our past system didn't welcome the collaboration. I've had social workers say, well, this is confidential, I can't discuss it with you. But if you see us as bridges, if you see us as advocates that work for you, that can help you cut your caseload down. Because I know as an advocate working with fathers in Southern California, that's my role, I so often can go and say to you, to one of my guys, listen, you want to get your kids back, listen to what I have to say. A social worker can't do that as often as they would love to, right? So I think that the best practice is really going to go back to understanding that our system from the past is done, and moving forward, collaboration and partnership is really going to be imperative to succeed at our vision. So for the sake of time, I'm going to jump right to what is at stake if we do not see these changes. What's at stake? And I'm going to start with you, Gail.
This is generational, as we've all talked about. Multiple generations are facing this problem. We are going to have more children in the juvenile delinquent system. I think that we're going to wind up paying more healthcare costs trying to keep up with Medicaid for these children and for families. I think we're going to struggle financially. We're going to struggle with more and more families that are going to fall between the cracks. We're going to have children that are going to struggle in school. I just think we're in big trouble with our children.
Good, Tony?
Absolutely, and just to kind of piggyback off what Gail said about the juvenile justice system, it goes much further than that because these kiddos are also going to wind up in the adult system, and we're going to wind up paying for them one way or the other. What we're going to lose is families. That's the bottom line. We are going to lose our families if we do not step in and do something to help them now.
Good. Allison?
I think every day that we do business as usual and we don't take action, we're adding to the disconnection and the trauma, and we all know the research on early childhood trauma and how it's generational and its lifespan, and we cannot continue to act this way. We don't have the resources to support these children throughout their whole lives, which is what's going to happen, and so we have to take action now.
I think bottom line is it's lives that are at stake, and that's the all and be all is you have lives at stake. You have youth lives, you have family lives. One of the things that come to mind is ambiguous loss. And I think we've kind of all touched on it in a huge sense, is you're tearing away lives and you're destroying lives when the first thought is to tear away instead of rebuild and help. And so because the system is designed the way in which it is, it's lives that are at stake. And that's the harsh reality. And it's about looking at that and seeing that I have someone's life, and what am I going to do with it? What if it was my life, or what if it was my child's life? What would I do then? And taking that to heart.
And I completely agree, and I just want to bring this back to some of my concerns are the burnout that all of you are going through, the secondhand trauma that all of you are going through. That's definitely something real, because I definitely believe that we are at a pivotal point right now where there is a movement happening to create a change with this current system. And it's apparent as we go to a lot of these Family First meetings and we see how many new faces are here and how many familiar faces are here. A lot of you are conductors of change. A lot of you do want to see progress. And I think that is, again, what fuels our fire. So before I close, any last comments? Gail?
I think back of a young man that I know who was somewhat in the foster system as a child, and then he wound up being in jail. And while he was in jail, his daughter was born. His grandparents are now raising his child. And he comes and he works for me occasionally. And he said, you know, Gail, I found myself in jail, and I was better supported in jail than out of jail. And so I wound up redoing the things I was doing wrong because I was in jail being supported. I don't want to see our children go through that. I want our children to be supported when they're young by families so they don't wind up in systems like that.
Tony?
I just want to thank all of you for coming together. It shows that your passion is the same as ours, that you guys have the great passion that we do. And I really believe that if we all work together and we collaborate like we need to, we can do this and we can change the child welfare system.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that there is a lot of hope. I have so much hope in families, and I just want to see children with less holes that they need to fill because we're keeping them with their families. So I have hope in family. I know we can do it.
And I think lastly, I think there's this saying that continues to go on, nothing about us without us. And I think in that essence, it really starts with this, preventative measures. You can't do anything unless you include everyone. And I think it's one of those approaches that, again, boils down to community approach, but also relationships and maintaining relationships from the beginning.
That's an excellent point. I think, it all comes back down to building relationships. And the vision that we all have together collectively can be achieved. And it really has to go back to collaboration, focusing on the relationship building, focusing on, trying to use the best practices that are out there. In close, I want to, talk a little bit about, again, the why. Some of you have seen the TED's talk by Simon, is it Sinek, where he talks about the best way for leaders, how leaders get people to follow them, right? And they ask and start with the question why. And so I want you all to continue to remember why we are all here, because hopefully we could keep that face for you. Hopefully we can continue to be the fuel to your fire as you continue to champion for our children, because our children deserve better. Thank you all.
Thank you.